Right, first up, do we have any questions from the floor? We go. There we go. There's always one. Thank you. Someone to kick it off.
Spacemaker. They're Swedish, right? Out of Stockholm.
I think Swedish, yeah.
So you said there's the open API thing, so we could effectively link our cost database and our carbon database to get square meter pricing, square meter carbon on the volumetrics that you're producing in those early stages, right?
It entirely, yeah. So it'll already out of the box. It already gives you area metrics, floor area metrics, volume metrics as well. And there are other plugins. I know facade plugin that's being built for it at the moment for energy analysis as well. So yes, it's all open.
So we can automate cost planning at the early stages, capital investment requirements, and even whole life cycle costing as well. Okay.
Yeah, potentially.
Just a quick question for Darren. What procurement model are you using on the Opera site? Is it traditional design?
So the first two contracts, which is demolition enabling package, and then the base. Sorry.
Yeah.
So first two contracts. First one is demolition enabling. The second one is the soil basement, and the 6-story office building is design and build.
All right.
And the latter contracts then are traditional contracts. And the reason really for that, I guess, in those initial phases, particularly the basement, because of the interface with the superstructure above, we needed to have some flexibility in the design. And because they were being designed at different times. So that's the primary reason.
Very good. It's better to control design and build. It's better control. The contractor has design responsibility.
Yeah, they're buying out the risk. We're placing more risk on the contractor. That's effectively it. So I guess you don't need to be as far progressed in terms of design, in the design and build, obviously. Whereas in the traditional contracts, it is employer risk. It sits with us, so we fully design that.
Are you asking them for a digital model to be handed over at the end?
Absolutely, yeah. So they're bringing the models to LOD5. So
my question leads into that one. So Darren, we have never seen an LOD 500 on any market. And I'm wondering what your facilities management requirements are. I think we spoke about this before privately, and me and you, but the facilities management requirements lead into that need for an LOD 500 and fully operational digital asset, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm interested to hear how things are developing on that.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's probably a bit premature, to be quite honest. My answer might be similar. So I guess we need to set up a facilities management company, and then we will go to the market and we'll engage an operator effectively. Just before I came into this meeting, I heard for the first time this idea of twinning. So I'm not entirely interested in knowing if people have something to say about that, but I guess we don't know how LOD5, its market has been able to be transferred over to facilities management and take from there. And all your assets are registered, and dampers and all the rest of it. You'd be able to know when it was installed, when it needs to be maintained, and all the rest of it. But I think there's a bit of a distance to go on it, and it's probably something that as an organisation we do need to improve in it, and I suppose be interested to get some feedback if there's any expertise in the room.
Deluxe have a facilities management platform that will take an LOD 500 to manage facilities, but as I say, we have never seen it in terms of that level of granularity and detail because of on the workloads that's required. But it's interesting,
So we do. So ArcDocs are claim controllers, I guess. I don't know if there's anybody from ArcDocs in the room, but we rely on these companies that we appoint for their expertise, and obviously we've been involved in a BIM execution plan and an EIR, but how that translates into reality, we definitely have more to learn on it.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think we're as an industry, we're still not there on that one. We have a bit to go on it. I mean, we've got the frameworks in place now, and we're reasonably successful on those. But it is a transitionary period, whatever way you look at it. And as we try to reach back into older buildings, older data, we still have that level of disconnect. So I mean, we want everything, obviously, but it's not so easy to get to. I suppose in relation to carbon and how that's at the moment, I mean, how it is, well, from a client perspective, I mean, in terms of building purchasers, how much of a drive are we seeing there? That one for the panel, I guess. I mean, are we looking for a mandate on this one? I mean, we have legal requirements.
be careful what I say now, don't I? I don't think that we're going to need a mandate. I think it's just going to happen.
Yeah.
Like when we look at other things, like just to answer the LOD5 question, when we look at oil and gas, LOD5 is normal.
That's for pharma as well.
And for pharma. When we look at sustainability, when we look at the customers now, what we're looking at, when a customer is looking at, when a client or a building owner is looking at that building, they're looking at a 25 to 40 year operational life cycle. They can't afford not to have an efficient business, efficient building. It's not viable. When we were looking at the schools 8 years ago or 7 years ago and putting in schools, and we were the operational company for those schools, we put in €800 light bulbs, as an example, into all the schools for every room, 8, 10 light bulbs for every room, because over the life cycle of the building, it was more efficient to put an €800 light bulb in. So I don't see why, the value is in doing it, not in not doing it. There's no value in not doing it. And we don't have enough resources not to do it. We don't have enough people to build the buildings to not do it. So I don't know if a legal mandate is going to be required. I think it's just going to be, the requirement is going to be to do that.
Yeah, I mean, we do have legislation running through the EU at the moment. They're talking 2027 to kick some of this stuff off. Look, we'll have to see how long it takes to get here. But I think there's a commercial imperative to get it done. I think that's the cold hard reality of it as much as anything else.
Just with the EU regulations for buildings, the EPBD, which has been voted on today, I think Kieran Cuff is the main rapporteur for that piece of legislation. That's not what's going to drive a lot of the agenda in terms of sustainability, in terms of carbon, in terms of biodiversity, and it's not going to change fundamentally overnight what we're doing. What's going to change fundamentally overnight what we're doing is the banks. So the financial industry are the ones that are driving this. They're driving this sustainability agenda. So if you want access to green finance, you have to show your green credentials. But what's most interesting is if you talk to anyone, AIB or Bank of Ireland, they are currently starting to do due diligence on refinancing. And they're looking at what they're funding, and they're saying, okay, what's your green credentials? What's your carbon footprint? What kind of a trajectory are you on? Are you following Europe's trajectory towards a decarbonized economy? But for the bank, their loan books are what needs to be decarbonized, and your building is their loan book. So if they have to decarbonize their loan book by 50% by 2030, that means that the heavy lifting has to be done by new buildings and followed up then with retrofit. So even for retrofits, you're going to see before the EPBD comes in 2028, you're going to see that even the rock wool you clad the building in, even the glazing you replace it with, they're going to want to know the carbon figures on those. So, that's a lot of information, a lot of data to get at a very early stage in the building, which is why, you need to do it at that feasibility concept stage and then at that funding stage. So every decision is going to be predicated, much now as it is on value and budget. Carbon is going to become a consideration in the same, in the same method, really.
One more.
Following on from that there, just for Simon on the material passports and the EPDs, right now we're seeing in the Irish industry that it's impossible to get an EPD because no one has actually developed an EPD yet. On the European market, it's a little bit easier because some countries are driving legislation in that way. But I guess my question is, you were talking about developing your own internal database on EPDs. And the way we kind of see it is that it's actually the client driving the EPD requirement, and their standards will drive the need for the digital passport and material passport.
Yeah, what we're driving is the development of how we capture that information. So we've had an internal process. So regardless of what the client need is, or sorry, I'll take that back. We are going to develop an internal process that at a basic enough level that we will be able to deliver any client requirement. So really what it's about for us is standardizing our approach to it across both civils and buildings, because we recognize there's a need there. When we look at what's available in the market and so on, like we have a data set, we bring in information, we create information, we have to manage it. If we have to translate that into client requirements, it's much easier to do that when we know what we have. So if we take something off the shelf, it rarely addresses all of the things that we need to address. And because we have such a level of such a volume of data available to us, it's easier for us to standardize at a sort of like a Lego block level that will allow us then to build out whatever is needed. So we do have internal reports, we've got external reporting, but because we'll be building it internally, we'll be able to modify that via our project information managers to suit the the requirements for the contract. It's a difficult one to do because there is no how do you do it. And the approach that we're taking is, well, this is what we do have, and this is what we can enforce. We can enforce our supply chain, fills in the COBE information, uses the correct unit class, and then we can report on that. And then whatever way that's going to be required by the client, some of them may be 3D PDFs, some of them may be a Maximo database, we don't know, but at least we'll have the data that we can then translate into whatever requirement there is. We don't know whether we're going to, host it in the Autodesk environment or host it on the cloud or transfer it as, blockchain. We don't know. But the path that we're on is very much look at what we have, enforce what we can enforce, i.e. ensure that we're getting the right information, validate, like an ISO process, validate it, publish it. But it really is about, because we operate in different places, we have to have a fundamental baseline to allow us to deliver stuff. So that's basically what it is.
Yeah, sorry. One of the other things I'll add to that as well is the Irish Green Building Council have been working in this space for quite a while. And there's a long way to go in terms of your EPDs. We don't have them all yet, clearly we don't. But there is a generic data set which is now published. We have a national generic data set. In addition to that, I'm old, okay? I remember a time when safety data sheets were a thing. When organizations were told you're going to have to produce a sheet of information which is going to have all of the various health and safety information for your product. And I remember the kickback at that at the time as well. But it happened. Once the legal framework was there, it's a necessary part of doing business. And these EPDs are going in exactly the same way. It will be a necessary part of doing business. So if you want to be in the market, that's what you've got to do. In addition to that, I've seen many organizations now are insisting on much deeper testing certification of their products, even outside of that. We have seen things like pyrite, mica, things like that going into into products, and the taxpayer has picked up some pretty serious bills as a result of that. Net result is that your tier one construction companies, when they're taking on product, they are looking for all of that test data for those batches. So this is part of the data issues, the data requirements in a normal business operation at this point. So we have a bit to do. One other thing I just want to just mention while I get the chance here. One of the things that obviously I'm from TUIS, Technological University of Shannon. Just so you know, there has been money put behind this by the minister. So this morning the minister announced a bunch of funding. Just looking at the number here, it is, if I read this right, 9.7 million. And this is to subsidize courses and micro-credentials in particular being offered in the sector. So in TUIS, we've been running Revit Architecture, Revit MEP for a long time and a bunch of other stuff. As have many other institutes as well. Now, coming down the tracks on that one, we are looking at ICMS as a thing. So ICMS is one of the frameworks which is used for whole life carbon assessment, life cycle assessment, all of that. So keep an eye on the websites. There's going to be a lot of these micro-credentials are going to be hitting the ground in the next week or so. And funding for those will be, to the 80% mark. So, what we're seeing here is complex. Make no mistake. It's not an easy thing to do, but it's not insurmountable, not by a long shot. So between the entities here that are already actively engaged in this and various educational institutions such as TUIS, TUD, Athlone, you know, we're trying to respond to these needs. So, you know, come and talk to us. Last, do we have any more questions? One more.
Yeah, hi, Simon. I think this kind of goes into you a little bit and maybe everybody as well. And it's maybe going a little bit off field, but the actual design of buildings, I think, is something that really has to come into all the conversations as well.
Yeah.
So sometimes there, you know, there's almost like they're a generic build every single time. With standardization and actually build it the most efficient way, not maybe previously the cheapest way, or, you know, even with, like, we come from steel, like we're the big carbon dirty emitters, but we probably come the farthest we have in actually making it the most efficient process that we can. And we see it ourselves, the inefficiencies that are coming from the way buildings are designed, detailed and reinforcement, and the waste is really, really poor. So there's I think maybe a bit of a joint thinking with everybody, with, you know, architects, engineers, everybody, developers, and that's coming in because they actually want to correct its green loans. So yeah, it's from your point of view, how much of the I suppose from a financial and you know, how much benefit you want to put to inventive companies like ourselves, and I don't mind saying it, you know, rather than it's just being cost, well, the efficiencies that come down the line in how you actually design buildings.
So we build, we don't design, but well, we do design, but not in Ireland. When we look at the likes of Forma, okay, as an example, Forma is a fantastic tool that allows for brilliant guesswork, and you can pick out the most optimum solution. When it comes to likes of construction for civils and things like that, we are currently using the likes of AI to look at design of complex structures like bridges. And we can reduce the amount of concrete in a bridge. We did one up in Scotland by over 30%. It's the same size bridge, same volume of, well, not same volume of bridge, but the way we can use AI to re-engineer a shape, the way we can print, you know, produce the concrete on site and then install it on site, we can reduce the amount of concrete in a bridge by 30%. And that's just by using generative AI. When we're looking at, when we're looking at engineering something, like one of the problems we have, just for example, with steel, is that frequently we over-engineer steel, right? People take the just in case, I'm going to cover my arse type thing, and we'll put in stronger, thicker, bigger steel, you know, and it's not a bad approach, but it's not the most efficient use of steel. If we were to look at lean, that would be a massive waste of overproduction, you know, loads of things, too much inventory, too much stock, too much production, too much transport. So I think that as we're moving forward, when we look at like the Autodesk suite of things, as an example, the whole process is being looked at from how we optimize delivery, not only from an environmental and sustainable point of view, but from a delivery point of view, from a construction point of view, you know, more efficient ways to manufacture, off-site fabrication. Like for us, if we were to produce, say, an apartment block, for example, and we off-site fabricate the likes of pods for bathrooms or rooms or anything like that, that's far more sustainable, far more efficient for us to do as a company. It's cheaper because we're standardizing our approach. I think that both designers and construction company and subcontractors are all looking to optimize each stage of their process, each part of what they deliver, because they're all looking for value. And if, as we look at each component, the more we can standardize our approach to things or be innovative in how we design and deliver stuff, I think that will come quite easily. It's not going to happen tomorrow, but it's definitely the path that we're on as an industry. And we have so far to go. And we're, as an industry, we're only speeding up towards it. It's not something that's slowing down for us as an industry. Yeah. It's something that's getting faster and faster.
Yeah. Just one more thing in relation to that as well. Never talk after an expert, so I'm making that mistake. One of the things as well, when we talk about whole life carbon assessment, is the fact that it is taking a cradle to grave approach, which means that when we talk about off-site construction and things like that, the carbon accountancy is taking place there as well. So the energy inputs inside a factory, which are obviously going to be more efficient than on site, are taken into consideration. And that's the whole way down the stream. So when we're trying to look for optimization across design processes and construction processes and all the rest, we can look to carbon. Okay, we think of carbon as a bad thing, but carbon in this instance here is a metric. It's a neutral metric that we can use, just like money. We've always looked at the cost of doing things. And when we're looking for efficiencies, sometimes efficiencies are hidden. But the way the carbon systems have been put together and how they work, they include transportation, they include raw materials, they include sequestration, they include energy release or carbon release at the end of the life cycle. Carbon actually becomes a really useful tool here. So by chasing this stuff down, we can start seeing where we're putting energy and effort into it and where it's being released later on. So there is a really good commercial imperative to get this stuff done, aside from the moral, the ecological, and every other type of imperative we have on it.